So what would you tell somebody that would say, well, why don't you just go get a job?
Why can't these people just get a job? This is the reaction of many people when they see a homeless person. Drugs, mental illness, police records, unemployment, these are often typically associated with homelessness. But homeless people are as diverse as, well, people. Based on various studies, somewhere between 15 and 45% of all homeless people in California either have a full-time job or have recently been working. And today, I'll introduce you to one such woman. Meet Lacie. Lacie has worked full-time for many years now. She is not a drug user, yet circumstances surrounding her and the state of our society have left her homeless for many years. But that's enough from me. Let's hear her story from Lacie herself. Lacie is a full-time employee in this McDonald's and has been a part of the workforce for many years, yet she hasn't had a proper place to live for many years. And the seeds of her present were sown in her past.
I grew up in Alaska. I wasn't born there, but I grew up in Alaska. I have two younger sisters, and then I've got my older brother, Steven, and many other siblings that, my mom had that we never got to meet, I'm actually one of, 14, I think, something like that. I don't know. But my mom had a lot of kids. I know that. We didn't have it easy. Holidays sucked, especially Christmas, birthdays, things like that, because like my sisters, they would get all these presents and stuff like that, and me and my brother, we were lucky if we even got a stocking that had coal in it. Literally. I remember one year having to give up my bedroom because I woke up one morning and I was smelling food, and I'm like, oh my God, what is that smell, and I go out to the kitchen and my mom's out there cooking at the stove, and that's a totally unusual sight. It's what the hell's going on here, and my mom's like, oh, by the way, this is Mike, and you're gonna have to move in with your two sisters because, they need the room. And I'm like, what? So, growing up kind of really sucked, and there was a lot of abuse, in pretty much every way that you could imagine. My mom, she decided to send my sisters down to Oklahoma to go see their grandparents. And I was like, that's not happening, because I wanted to protect my sisters. And I called the cops, and in the end, it didn't do any good. Statute of limitations, all that good kind of stuff, So bottom line, it was basically, nobody believed me, nobody wanted to do anything, and so my sisters went down there and they ended up getting abused too. So that kind of really sucked. But because of that, my mom was like, out! Well, I used to call CPS on my mom all the time. They never did anything. In fact, I remember one time, there was one time when my mom sat there and she was laughing on the phone afterwards because the caseworker had come out and they asked my youngest sister, Kathy, at the time, about if mom had ever hit us. And she goes, oh yeah. And the caseworker goes, really? Well, what does she hit you with? And my sister goes, with the boot jack. And the caseworker was like, what? Well, how long ago was it that she hit you? And my sister goes, oh, it's been years and years. To a 5-year-old, 2 days has been years and years, So the caseworker closed the file unsubstantiated. And my mom laughed about it. She was on the phone with everybody laughing about it. Oh yeah, CPS came back out again, da-da-da-ha. So here I was over at this guy's house, and we were in the backyard and we were doing a garden, you know. So I had this I don't know, it was like a pickaxe almost, you know, kind of, you know, and I'm sitting there and I've got it in my hand, you know, because we were doing the rows for the vegetables and stuff, and all these cops started coming out from everywhere, and I'm like, oh my God, and they're all like, put the weapon down, and I'm like, what weapon? And they're all like, put it down, and I'm like, you know, and they arrested me. You know, they put me in handcuffs. I was like totally freaked out. And they put me in the back of the car, and I was like, where are you taking me? You know, I mean, I've done nothing wrong. I haven't done anything, you know, and they're like, we're taking you to API. And I'm like, API, which is Alaska Psychiatric Institute. And I'm like, what the fuck? You know, I was scared, and I was angry, I was hurt and shit, you know, and it just sucked, you know. But it was probably the best time of my life that I ever had. I guess because it was just structured, you knew what to expect, you know. The staff and the doctors there, they were really nice. They actually listened. I was 13 when I was there, and how long did I stay? Probably about a week or so. But the doctor talked to my mom extensively, you know, and ended up talking to me. And then, you know, that's when he told me, he goes, your mom, he goes, I firmly believe, later go, mom has Munchausen syndrome by proxy, you know. He goes, and you are right. He goes, you're not crazy. He goes, and there's nothing wrong with you. He goes, the thing is though, he goes, we can't release you to the streets, you know. We have no choice but to release you back to your mom. And I'm like, you know that you released me back to her, and as soon as freaking we walk out of here, I'm gone. And so they released me back to my mom, and my mom was all like, oh yeah, you're going to Charter Hospital. I ended up going to Charter Hospital, and I was there for like 6 weeks. They released me because I refused to eat. You know, I quit eating. Because they had me locked in a little room, you know, and that was their thing, you know. It was just this tiny room that had cold, you know, tile floors on it, and this hard pebble carpet on the walls and everything, and this stupid camera in the corner, you know. And you could sit there and just pound on the door, you know. It didn't matter how bad you had to pee or anything like that, you know. You'd be pounding on the door for hours and hours, and they wouldn't do anything, you know. Charter Hospital up there was miserable, you know. They were horrible, you know. So I spent a couple weeks there, like 6 weeks, and then as soon as I got out, my mom took me back to the house, and the first time she hit me, I was gone.
Up to this point, Lacie's life has been topsy-turvy and unlike anything any of us would have possibly experienced. But it was about to get even more tumultuous.
And then when I was 15, I got pregnant with my son. And that's a crazy situation. You know, I was gonna put him up for adoption, and when I had him, I just couldn't, you know. He was amazing. I didn't know how I was gonna take care of him, you know, because I couldn't even really take care of myself. But yeah, I was gonna keep him, so I did, you know. And I moved back in with my mom for a minute. That was probably the worst choice I ever made, you know. And when my son was 3 months old, I hit the streets again. I was out there on the streets with Colton, and one of the guys that I had met when I was out there the first time, his name was Daniel White, and he contacted me, and I told him, you know, everything that was going on, and he goes, I'm gonna get you away from your mom. And at this time I was 16, and he was in the military. He was actually stationed down here in 29 Palms, And he came back to Alaska, and he told my mom basically, you know what, I'm taking your daughter, I'm gonna take care of her, and you can kiss my ass, you know. And so he did, you know, he put me up in a place and took care of me, and my mom tried to have him arrested. She called his commanding officer and everything. And I was all like, and so I had to talk to the military and explain to them, no, he's, you know, he didn't kidnap me. He's not manipulating me or anything like that. My mom's abusive, you know, and you know, he took me away to take care of me, you know. Believe it or not, Daniel and I got married right after I turned 18. I turned 18 on April 27th, and we were supposed to get married May 2nd, but along came my second son, Donovan, on May 2nd. So that didn't work out. We had to wait and get married May 3rd.
For a while, things seemed to be working for Lacie. New love, new kid, new life. But once again, her past caught up with her present.
We got married, and we were married for a couple of years until we went through a situation with CPS, you know, once again, thanks to my mom. And I had lost my kids and stuff like that. And the court ordered, because of, you know, my mom and everybody screaming, you know, oh, he's abusive, which he wasn't. He was not abusive. He took really good care of me, you know. And did he have a temper? Yeah, he had a temper. He was young, you know, we were both young, you know, and, you know, sometimes things, you know, piled up. Did he ever lay his hands on me? No, not ever. He was really good, but the courts ordered that he divorce me, or that I divorce him, in order to be able to get my kids back. So we had to divorce. But we're still to this day best friends, and we talk all the time.
Her life had again taken an unwanted turn. But young Lacie didn't lose hope and worked for her kids and her kids' future.
Well, I was a dummy. I got married to a guy, and he was a drug dealer, you know? And we were together for 8 years. I ended up with, you know, just like so much stress, and it was so hard that I couldn't deal with it, you know. And so finally I said screw it, you know, and I did leave. I left with Colton, and we went to Minnesota of all places. And the second day that I was there, Colton broke my leg. We were wrestling around, and he was like 13 at the time, and I had him in a headlock, and he was like, he had his arms around my waist and everything. Well, he stepped on his pant legs, and when he did, then he started going down, and I was like, oh! And so when he went down, then we came down like this, and he fell right on my leg. So the ankle bone, or the leg bone, right where it meets the ankle, the smaller bone, it, like right there at the ankle, it did a perfect V-shaped break, you know?
Even in dire situations, Lacie somehow seems to find humor.
And they put me in a Darth Vader boot. That's what my kid calls it, the Darth Vader boot. And so every time I walked around, my kid would go, and I'm like, Colton, that's not funny, you know? You know, he felt so bad about it. He actually went out there, because it was winter time, and he went out there knocking on everybody's door. Can I shovel your driveway? Can I shovel your driveway? And he bought me so many boxes of chocolate-covered cherries as an apology that to this day I can only eat like one or two now. I used to eat them by the box full. Now I'm just like one or two, and I'm like, oh, I'm good, you know?
But the old patterns have a habit of repeating themselves.
This is too much snow for me. It's too much like Alaska. So we came back here. We flew back, and I went back to staying with my husband again, and it was worse than before, you know? And so I was like, forget it. So I actually ended up hitting the dumpster area right behind the Rite Aid in Palm Springs. And I stayed there for a while, and Colton was there with me for a minute. This is the first time when I was really, really homeless out on the streets.
And then Lacie faced something no mother should ever have to face.
My phone rang one day, and it was right before Christmas, and I hear, "Hi, this is Duke, I want to see my son." I'm like, "Who?" "This is Duke, I want to see my son." "I don't know who the hell you are, but that's not a funny joke, you know?" Well, it wasn't a joke, and it turned out that there was nothing that could be done to prevent him from seeing Colton. And the first time that he got to see him, Colton, you know, he took off with Colton. He hit him, you know, and Colton went through a lot of stuff, you know, and I ended up losing the kids because of it, you know, and it was crazy because in court, the judge told me that, you know, "Well, you have an open CPS case," and I said, "Well, yes, but he just admitted to calling CPS on me 42 times in 1 month. That is irrelevant." No, how is that irrelevant? Because, you know, the only reason why I have an open CPS case is because he called 42 times in 1 month. So, but it took 5 years of fighting to be able to get my kid, and it was insane, you know. But they couldn't deny me visitation either. So in the end, he had to send Colton back to do visitation with me. And when Colton came back, Colton, on his own, called him up and said, "I'm not coming back. I'm not. You're a hypocrite, and I'm not a mini-me. I am my own person with my own thoughts and my own feelings," you know. And I remember how badly he was shaking while making that phone call and how his voice just shook. And you know what? I was so proud of my kid right then because he was doing something that I could never have done. I was homeless from you know, basically 2009 to 2013. And, you know, in 2013, it was only because of, you know, living with a guy. You know, I kind of felt like my mom, you know, I was bouncing from guy to guy. But it was due to living with another guy that he moved out of state and went back to Colorado, where he's from, with his parents. And he gave me the chance of going, so I did. So because of him, I was not homeless for 2 years. Then after he had a hit and run accident, things changed with him, and he became a lot more violent. And so after the last time of him, you know, kind of choking me out, I was like, bye, you know, and I packed up my dog, some of my clothes. I had $68 in my pocket, almost a full tank of gas, and 2 packs of smokes, and I took off. I hit the road, and I came back out here to California, you know. This is where my son was anyway, you know, and I missed the hell out of him. Then I was homeless again because, you know, the McDonald's that I had been talking to, when I got out here, they're like, "Oh, we don't know what you're talking about, you know, we don't do transfers from out of state and stuff like that." And this sucks, you know. Here it is, 2015, and I'm once again, you know, after 2 years of not being homeless, now I'm homeless again.
Lacie took the right and courageous step of leaving her husband for good. But it didn't end all of her problems. However, with perseverance, some new companionship, and the constant support of her son, Colton, Lacie set in a path to change her life. And in the next episode, we'll share that story. Until then, farewell. See you next time.